Hello friends and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily Reddit content. Today we are jumping right back into, you guessed it, good ol' rSlash entitled parents. Dang-o. We've got law, we've got legislature, we've got pizza. There's some good stories in here today, so let's not hesitate and we'll jump right into things. Entitled dad steals boat motor, acts as his own attorney during criminal trial, has fool for a client. Got him. I'm a longtime lurker, and this is my first post. Although kids were not involved in this story, Entitled Dad did mention them during his testimony, so this story seemed like it may fit here. Cast, OP, an overworked prosecutor, ED, Entitled Dad. There may have been cases in this forum that resulted in the entitled parent being arrested, and I thought there may be some interest as to what happens after the arrest. This happened many years ago when I was a deputy prosecutor handling misdemeanor cases. In this particular case, there was a street on a private beach with a series of houses in a remote area. There were other places that had public beach access, and this particular place was off the main road and not easily accessible. There was no reason to be there unless you were a resident of one of the houses or visiting someone there. The entitled dad drove into the neighborhood and stole a boat motor from one of the properties. A neighbor watched him put the motor into his truck, got the license plate number, and called the police. Open and shut case. A deputy responded and pulled him over a short time later. The deputy found the boat motor in the back of the truck, and Entitled Dad admitted that he took it. Entitled Dad was cited for misdemeanor theft. He wasn't taken into custody, but was given a notice to appear in court. This is typical for a non-violent property offense. I then got the case. So I was minding my own business, working in my office, when Entitled Dad called and demanded to speak to me. He then demanded that I dismiss the charge against him. He didn't really have a coherent reason as to why, since he pretty much got caught red-handed. He mainly yelled and was obnoxious. Legal tip number 1. Yelling at the prosecutor will not result in criminal charges going away, but it will result in having to deal with a cranky prosecutor. When he couldn't bully me into dismissing the charge, he then demanded that another prosecutor be assigned to his case. This did not happen. Legal tip number 2. People charged with crimes don't get to choose the prosecutors on their cases. The case is set for trial. He pleads not guilty and elects to represent himself. At trial, I call as witnesses the neighbor, the boat motor owner, and the arresting deputy. Entitled Dad presents a beachcombing defense that if he's able to keep a pretty shell he finds at the beach, he ought to be able to keep a boat motor. It didn't make a lot of sense. It really got interesting when he called himself as his own witness. Oh God. He questioned himself by having a conversation with himself. Here's an example of how some of the actual testimony went. Entitled Dad shifts to the left side of the witness chair. Mr. Entitled Dad's last name, do you have a motive to steal a boat? Entitled Dad then shifts to the right side of the witness chair and looks at the empty space that he had just occupied. No, I did not have a motive to steal a boat. Entitled Dad slides to the left. Mr. Entitled Dad's last name, do you like seafood? Entitled Dad slides right. No, I do not like seafood. My kids do not like seafood. My wife likes seafood, but that's not a motive to steal a boat. I look over at the arresting deputy who was sitting next to me as my designated law enforcement representative. He was watching with a horrified expression, and I saw his lips silently form the words, "What the f?" Later when we were outside, the deputy told me how freaky he thought it was. It took the jury 15 minutes to find him guilty. I don't remember specifically what he got as a sentence, but it was likely only fines and community service, since that was typical for this type of offense. Oh God. Entitled Dad, really? I would have loved to have seen this. This is beyond stupid. This is like the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. We had one of our neckbeard stories yesterday refer to Phoenix Wright, and I think I'm going to have to use that clip again. Objection! This witness is clearly not fit to be questioned, or to be his own lawyer, or maybe this is all part of some very deep 4D chess move where he's trying to get an insanity plea or something like that, but you're not going to do jail time. I mean, dude said, pay a fine, do some community service. So I think all signs point to this guy just being totally whacked out of his mind. The beachcombing defense is just so ridiculous. It's like, yeah, I was out here with my metal detector and I found a boat motor, so I took it home. No big deal, right? Where did you find the boat motor? Oh, it was in some guy's yard. What an absolute idiot. God, I would pay such good money to see this. Oh, wow. I love this story. This is like the greatest thing to start off with. Thank you so much, OP, for sharing your your brush with madness. Oh, God. Alright, let's get into the next story, I guess. Entitled Family Thinks They Own the Entire Beach. Hi guys, this isn't my story, but a family friend of mine, and after she told me this story, I knew it belonged on here. I'm gonna make this a two-parter since the first part is actually kinda long. Quick backstory. My family, who aren't involved in this story, and family friend own beach houses in a little bay area that eventually leads out to the ocean. There are several small piers within the boardwalk area, and families can swim and jump off the piers. They have a netting surrounding the piers to indicate how far families can swim. Beyond the netting, that's where boats, kayaks, etc. can run. Unfortunately, on these piers, there have been some entitled people believing that they own some of these piers because their beach house is right there behind it. I will admit that our family has had our beach house for over a century, passed down through several generations. Even though we used to walk down the street to get to this pier, I think if anybody deserves that pier, it should be us, lol. Anyways, on to the cast of our story. FF, family friend. N, family friend's neighbor. EM, entitled kid, spawner. ND, neighbor's daughter. The first part of the story happened to neighbor, who eventually told family friend what happened. After swimming hours are over at the pier, families like to go there to catch crabs. Only crabs that measure within a certain height can be kept. Because of the whole thing with social distancing, neighbor and neighbor's daughter went to try and find a good spot away from other families so that they could crab. They actually got a really good spot at the end of the pier away from everybody else, and they set up their things there. They were only planning on catching a few crabs and then heading out. It was only a few minutes into their crabbing when the 15 to 16-year-old entitled kid came marching right on up to neighbor and neighbor's daughter. Entitled kid, "Hey, you're in my spot!" Neighbor looked around, trying to find anything to show that this kid's spot was taken. Nets, cages, buckets, etc. There weren't any. They were the only ones there. Everyone else was on the other side of the pier. Neighbor, I'm sorry, but you've got nothing here to show that this is your spot. Entitled kid, "You need to leave now! This is my spot!" Neighbor, "Kid, this is public property. Nothing here is yours. We're only going to catch a few crabs, and then we'll leave. Please be patient." Entitled kid continued to whine to neighbor for a couple of minutes before finally leaving. Neighbor couldn't believe how immature this kid was acting. Her daughter was only 10, and acting more mature than him. Not even a few minutes later, entitled kid comes back, and who does he come with? Entitled mother, who was a full-on Karen. The blonde, "Let me speak to your manager" haircut, the sunglasses, long nails, etc. She went right on over to neighbor and did that throat clearing that nobody likes. Ahem. Entitled mother, "Excuse me, I heard you two made fun of my son and won't let him have his spot back." Neighbor, "We never insulted him, and there was nothing out here to show that this is his spot. We're only here to catch a few crabs and then we'll head out." Entitled mother, "No, you need to leave this spot now." Neighbor, "Lady, we're not going anywhere." Entitled mother pointing to a house, "You see that? That's our house right there. My son has claimed this spot on the pier as his own. You must obey that or I will tell the authorities." Neighbor, "There's nothing marked on the pier that states this spot is your son's. This pier and the entire beach and boardwalk is public property. I myself could call the authorities on you for disturbing us." It looked like neighbor had finally put entitled mother and entitled kid in the corner. Just then, neighbor's daughter, completely oblivious to the argument and focusing on the crabbing, pulls out a small crab from her net and shows it to neighbor. Before they could say anything though, entitled mother quickly butts in. Entitled mother, "Give us that crab you just caught. It'll make up for all the trouble that we caused." I think you meant to say you caused. It's kind of a Freudian slip. Neighbor, it's too small to be kept. Entitled Mother,
Who told you that?
Neighbor, it's an actual law here. Entitled Mother,
There's nothing here to prove that.
Neighbor pointed to a sign that was on a pole directly behind them explaining the rules of catching crabs. Neighbor, if you own the pier like you claim you do, you would have known that. Entitled Mother didn't say anything, but tried to snatch the small crab out of Neighbor's daughter's net. Neighbor's daughter started shaking the net over the water, hoping that the crab would let go. Thankfully, before Entitled Mother got to her, the small crab let go and plopped back into the water. Entitled Mother let out an ungodly howl at the sight, as if she just watched her precious entitled kid get attacked by a shark or something. Finally, she grabbed entitled kid and stormed away from them. Neighbor and Neighbor's daughter didn't stay too long after that, and didn't catch any crabs. They both just wanted to get the hell out of there after that. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 involves family friend and the entitled mother and her family being the reason that a new law was created for the beach. Stay tuned. You think I'd read part 1 without having part 2 ready? Here we go! Entitled Mother think they own the beach, part 2. Town makes new law because of Entitled Mother. Heyo, here's part 2. So, quick backstory for those who didn't read part 1. On to part 2. Here's the cast. FF Family Friend. EM Entitled Kid Spawn of He doesn't say anything in this story this time, though he still does stuff. Oh, police officer. So Family Friend took her family down to the same pier as part 1 so that they could go swimming. Her husband, mother, children, and grandchildren. Because Family Friend's mom was elderly, both Family Friend and her mom decided to stay under the pavilion in the shade while watching everybody else swim. At first everything was going good, and it looked like everybody was having a good time. Then cue Entitled Mother and her family of 20 plus people gathering inside the pavilion, setting up food, tables, and chairs directly behind Family Friend and her mother. They couldn't even move or get out because of how close they were and how crowded everything was. Family Friend could tell that this was the person Neighbor mentioned before because of the way Neighbor had described her. Family Friend still tried to be civil, and when she saw Entitled Mother, she tried to ask her nicely to move. Family Friend, hi, would you mind moving your party over a little bit? My mom and I barely have any space to move. Entitled Mother,
Excuse me? We happen to live here, so we can do what we want.
Family Friend, this pavilion doesn't belong to anybody. It's public property. Entitled Mother,
Whatever, we're still not going anywhere.
Family Friend isn't a fan of arguing, so she and her mom just tried sucking it up and continued to watch their kids and grandkids play in the water. Unfortunately, that was short-lived, as Entitled Mother's family started blasting music and yelling inside of the pavilion. Then Entitled Kid came along on a jet ski. The entire family saw him and began cheering, screaming his name, etc. Entitled Kid came extremely close to the netting on the other side of the dock and began doing figure eights on his jet ski, splashing water on other swimmers nearby and creating huge waves. Depending on the time of day high tide and low tide are, the water at the other end of the dock could get very deep, and any young kid at that end could probably struggle swimming down there. Luckily, Family Friend told us that everybody at that end of the dock quickly got out when Entitled Kid started doing this, and her grandkids weren't that deep in the water, so everybody was fine. After a few minutes, Entitled Kid finally left, and everybody went back into the water, but Entitled Mother's family still hasn't calmed down. Finally, Family Friend and the other beachgoers saw the flashing lights of a police car pull up onto the beach area. Everybody smiled as they knew Entitled Mother and her family were going to get in trouble. Entitled Mother and her family saw the police car and attempted to ignore it, but suddenly grew quieter. The officer got out of the car and approached Entitled Mother. Officer, hello ma'am, may I have a word with you? Entitled Mother, all innocent-like.
What's wrong, officer?
Officer, I've been receiving numerous complaints throughout the past half hour in regards to your party causing a disturbance. Entitled Mother,
What? We haven't been doing anything.
Family Friend, Officer, they've been yelling and screaming the entire time they've been here, blasting music, and somebody from their family came by on a jet ski extremely close to the dock and started showing off. Entitled Mother,
Mind your own damn business.
Family Friend, how can I when I'm less than a foot away from you and you won't move? Officer, alright, here's how this is going to work out. To Entitled Mother, You can either move your family outside of the pavilion so that people can have room to sit, or you can leave the beach altogether. Entitled Mother.
You can't do that. We have a beach house right over there.
Officer. Then you can either move your party over there or move your party outside of the pavilion. Entitled Mother.
This is unacceptable. You can't do this to us. What's your name? I'll make sure to write a report about you.
Officer gives his name and his badge number. Entitled Mother.
Alright then, I'll call your station and make sure you get fired.
Officer. The station is well aware of everything going on right now, ma'am. And if you fail to comply, we will have you fined and removed from the premises, whether your house is right here or not. Entitled Mother was having none of this. So instead of leaving like any other person would do, she grabbed a sandwich from one of the bags she brought and threw it right at the officer. The officer, without hesitation, grabbed her and cuffed her. The other members of her family were growing mad at the officer for arresting her, but they didn't fight back. Officer. This is your last warning, ma'am. Either take your party elsewhere, or I'll bring you back to the station. You're very lucky I'm not putting you in my police car right now. Entitled Mother finally cooperated and was released. She didn't go completely free, however, as her and all of the adults in the family were fined. Oof. She was fined the heaviest, though, for also assaulting the officer. The family grumpily grabbed their stuff and left. The officer didn't leave until he knew they were gone. A couple of days later, a law was put in place that no partying of any kind would be allowed on the beach, because of Entitled Mother. A patrol officer has also been sent to inspect the pier every once in a while each day to make sure that Entitled Mother and her family weren't doing this again. And so far, since Family Friend, her family, and my family have been down there, they haven't. But they're still extremely loud and blasting music on the beach and inside their house. That's my Entitled Parents story. Hope you guys enjoyed. Well, that turned out quite different than I thought. I heard beach house and I'm like, ooh, big money. Everybody's gonna be classy. No, not even close. There was not an ounce of class between all 20 plus of her family members. That is insanity. And this is exactly the reason that I hate the beach. I love the sun, sand, and surf, but it's just all the people who are like, hey, let's light a bonfire and get drunk and fucking cackle all night. It's like, dude, can I just enjoy myself? Can I live? That's all I'm trying to do. Sometimes I go out to the beach with my wife, you know, we're trying to have a nice romantic time. There's drunk thoughts 20 feet away throwing up in the sand. And those are like the late nights. But then sometimes during the day I'll take my kids and, you know, there's like a broken beer bottle or some crazy crap like that. And I guess that comes from people who don't really live in the area, because if they live there, then why would they trash it like that, right? I hate party people. Even as like a kid, I was pretty well behaved with my partying. At least I like to think so. And it does kind of suck that an ordinance had to be implemented. I don't know how old the OP is. I don't know if he likes to party or what, but if he does like to party, then it kind of sucks. If he doesn't like to party, then whatever. No harm, no foul, I guess. These people obviously don't deserve nice things anyways. Oh. And to circle back on an earlier point, these people obviously do live there. Their property is completely adjacent, so they think they get like special privileges or something like that. It's just so frustrating. You need to be respectful because you are entitled to nothing. But then, if they thought that way, they wouldn't be entitled parents, would they? Alright, let's get into one more story, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Gas station Karen gets the reverse. Reverse Uno? Is that what you talk about? So, I made my usual stop at the local gas station this morning, only to find the parking lot full of cars. I expected to find a line, but as soon as I walked in the door, I'm greeted by a woman, the Karen of our story, along with her 6 crotch goblins. They're raiding the candy rack, and she obviously has no control of the situation, nor does she seem to care. They're blocking off the main access to the store, and a gentleman, the hero of the story, walks in behind me. Myself, being a non-confrontational person, I'm assessing the safest way around, as he politely says, "Excuse me," so I step to the side. He makes the same approach to the Karen and her kids, to which she angrily snaps her head up at him and says,
I'm sorry, can't you see my children are picking out their candy? You can wait, it'll only take a second.
He looks back at me, to which I just shrug and opt to go around the tight back aisles, avoiding the stock boxes on the floor. He follows me and we both come around at the drink coolers where I proceeded to snag a drink. Guy does the same, and just as I'm about to move on, the dreaded throat clearing erupts from behind us.
You two are unbelievable. My children were about to get a drink and you just shoved your way around them. Do either of you have any manners?
Guy smiles and says, my friend and I were just grabbing our drink. You can wait. It'll only take a second. Her face turned red, but she kept her mouth shut. This guy is a hero. Already, I love him. As I suspected, the line was not short, and I managed to make it there before this evil woman, but now had to endure the entire clan behind me. They were whining, complaining, and kept leaving the line to get more things. It was like she was running a circus or something. I saw the cashier kept looking in her direction, and I could see the dread on her face that told me that this was not the end of my adventure with this woman. Then I hear one of her children say, "Mommy, look! They have pizza!" I noticed that there were 3 slices left, and she was trying to figure out how they could split them evenly. I'm now trying to justify buying all of these slices when my hero walks over and helps himself to the last 3 slices on the warmer. I didn't have to look back to know what was coming, and there it was, in a voice that echoed through the store.
Hey, asshole! Those belong to my kids! They asked for them first, so you better give them to me now!
He smiled and said, Lady, if you wanted them, you should have gotten them. She huffed.
Obviously you don't need all those, so at least give me 2. There's no way you need 3 slices that big.
He grinned. Sure I do. 1 for now, and the other 2 for my 2 breaks at work. I love this guy. Same. Oh, she starts screeching at the guy in the language of the Karens, and I just try to tune her out. The children start screaming and crying when at last she turns her attention to the cashier and starts demanding that she make more pizza. The cashier looks at her and says, our policy is that pizza can only be made in downtime intervals, and it being a holiday, that would probably be a while, seeing as she was the only one running the store. I think you missed an end quote in there somewhere. Whatever. Karen.
That's bullshit. I come in here all the time and know the owner. Let me speak to him right now. I'm gonna have you fired and this man removed from the store.
At this point, I'm laughing to myself because I do know the owner, and I see the biggest grin come across the cashier's face. That's funny because I know all the regulars in this store, and I've never seen you before. As for talking to the owner, would you like to speak with me or my husband? What a twist! Karen shut up and snatched everything from her children. She started stuffing it anywhere she could and shoved her screaming horde out of the door. Guy still bought the pizza, and between him, myself, and the cashier, we all shared a good laugh. I mean, I know holidays can bring out the worst in people, but damn. I love watching owners put the smack down on entitled parents. That blew up right in her face, didn't it? Ain't gonna be no pizza for 4th of July, kiddos. And probably if the mother had been a bit more well-mannered, or the children had been a bit more well-mannered, then this whole situation would have never happened. But since the kids are running around being little demons, and the mom's being a... Alright then, roger that. I'm gonna take my revenge in any way possible. And this entitled parent story features a little bit of petty revenge, which you know I love. I'd really like to know more about the hero of the story, like, what does he do for a job? How can I send him money? I'd like to buy him a beer and a slice of pizza for sure. Seems like such a cool dude. I love that snarky, in-your-face, flip it all around, reverse Uno. There was a reverse Uno twice in this story. My goodness. That's how you know it's good. Dang. But anyways, friends, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, I hope you'll like, comment, and or subscribe. Check out the links in the description to Twitter, Discord, Patreon. I don't know why I say Patreon like that. I guess it makes it sound a bit more classy. But anyway, shouts out to all of my patrons. Robert Waits, Nathan, Crimson Albedo, Lady Nix, Radamus Cisco, Damon Darkstar, and the OG. Y'all already know. Nigo the Legend. If you'd like to join up on the Patreon, that'd be super cool. You can also check out my other channel. My other channel has the join button enabled, so you can subscribe directly on YouTube, which is totally awesome. This channel doesn't have it quite yet. We just gotta grow a little more, but the growth has been steady, so I'm gonna keep pushing out this content, and I hope that you guys will keep enjoying it. Join us tomorrow for possibly some r/petty revenge, and do not forget to keep yourselves safe out there. Wash your hands, wear your mask. You are loved, you are valuable, and you definitely deserve it. So I hope that you lovely people will join me tomorrow, and I'll see you then. So until then, friends, bye-bye.